Hello, BookTube. Recently, I had it pointed out to me that somehow or other on this channel I have never done a dog starter kit. And I didn't believe it, and I searched the records, but it took some time because I've made over 100 videos, and it turned out to be true. And I made a dog starter kit, and I thought, all right, you have put the greatest embarrassment of your entire life behind you. But then that reading guy pointed out to me that I have never made a Kennedy starter kit, despite the fact that for 450 years, all of my reading friends have summarized me as dead Romans, dead Kennedys, and dogs. Now, I didn't believe that reading guy. I, of course, thought he was that misleading guy. But he insisted, and he convinced me. And for daring to change my mind on the subject, he is henceforth going to be that bleeding guy. But in the meantime, I thought I would rectify the single biggest oversight on my channel by making a Kennedy starter kit. And by Kennedys here, I am of course referring to the once powerful American dynasty. Joe Kennedy, the Broadway and Hollywood impresario who made and broke many men and made and lost and made again many fortunes, and his sons. We're dealing here just with canonical texts, just with basic texts here. Some of them are long. I don't usually like to put long books on starter kits, but there's no avoiding long books when you're talking about the subject of the Kennedys. But I want to deal with just the basics here. So I will not be dealing with John F. Kennedy Jr., and I will not be dealing with RFK Jr., a complete lunatic who is now in control of the health services of the United States of America. A science-denying lunatic, a flat earth, evolution-denying lunatic, is in charge of the health agencies of this country. Which means that when the next pandemic happens, and I mean when, not if, 2027, when the next worldwide pandemic happens, the mortality rates, the excess death figures in the United States alone are going to be through the roof. We're talking 10 million people dying because no one will know who to trust, and so no one will trust anyone. Anyway, I'm not talking about those later generations. I'm just talking about the Kennedy brothers, the sons of Joe Kennedy. And the most prominent of those, the most important one of those, in my opinion, the most important figure in human history is President John F. Kennedy. And I want to start off the starter kit with a very good book on his presidency, which you might think would be a dime a dozen, but they are actually very rare. They are hard to find. It's this. It's by James Giglio, and it is The Presidency of John F. Kennedy. This is the second edition. New information, new viewpoints. It is not Camelot. It is not misty-eyed. It is not adulatory. It's actually a very good book on what Kennedy actually did in office, which is kind of central to most of what we're talking about here. So I wanted to start off with that before we move to a group of books that belong on the starter kit and are essential, that are mockingly referred to as court historians. There's a group of books that were written by men who knew Kennedy, by men who had unashamedly admitted to loving him, who served in his administration, who were loyal and faithful to his family, and who wouldn't have written conscious lies about him if they had to chop off their arm to do it. They wouldn't have done it, mainly because they knew he wouldn't have liked it. The first of those is the greatest book on Kennedy. This is Ted Sorenson's book just called Kennedy. It's a biography. It's also an administration history. It's amazingly good. It always irritates me when I hear this referred to as simple court history. Then we have Arthur Schlesinger. This is his book, 1,000 Days. This is the Kennedy White House, the time that he was in office, in power. There's a lot of other stuff here, not just that. This is also a big book, also very much worth it. There's one other that's big. It has a slightly more localized slant to it, but it manages to get in the whole of the Kennedy administration. And that is William Manchester's book, The Death of a President. which is on the surface largely about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, but also about his presidency. Now, I want to add a couple of books that actually do come close. One that comes close to being an actual court history in the derisive sense of the word, but also, as any historian will tell you, in the invaluable sense of the term. What we wouldn't give for court histories of most of the figures in history. The first of those is by Pierre Salinger, With Kennedy. This is invaluable, I think, for a not quite insider's inside view of what the Kennedy administration was like. You can find a copy. I think you'll find it's very good reading, and I think you'll find it very interesting. And then Kenny O'Donnell and Dave Powers and Joe McCarthy did a book that is actually court history. It is people remembering the good times. It's Johnny, We Hardly Knew Ye, which is anecdotes, jokes, urban legends, favorite stories of John F. Kennedy. It doesn't purport in any way to be a history or a biography, but these three men, especially the first two, did not always get along with each other. They mostly didn't get along with each other, and they often fought with Kennedy and his brother. So there isn't much in here that probably didn't happen, if you know what I mean. If you're co-writing a book with people who don't agree with you about much, the stories that get in here are going to be the ones you all agree on. It's also excellent reading, I should point out. Then, to get back to Arthur Schlesinger again, he wrote a gigantic book on Robert F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's brother and his Attorney General. And it is great. It is absolutely great. It's Robert Kennedy and His Times. Another 1,000-page whopper for this starter kit. I include it not only because I don't include Robert Kennedy anywhere else on this list, but also because John F. Kennedy is the star of this book. He gets all the best quotes, most of which are not in Schlesinger's enormous book about him. so well worth your time. Very enjoyable to read. Then to sort of round out the idea of historical accounts here, I thought I would give a modern biography. John F. Kennedy is one of those figures. I've mentioned them on this channel before. Abraham Lincoln would be another. FDR or Churchill would be others. Alexander the Great. John F. Kennedy is another example of a historical figure about whom it is very, very easy to write a bad book. 5 of them show up every year about John F. Kennedy, even now. And God knows how many there have been. Oh, God knows how many there have been. And most of them are advertise their dumbness right on the top of the bat. But some of them not. Some of them you don't realize you're reading a dumb book until they're halfway through. A bad book, a shallow, stupid, believing the hearsay piece of hero worship. It's a dangerous thing. I'm hoping that I once upon a time hoped that we would grow out of it. It comes from the fact that Kennedy was a fixture in the childhood of a lot of the men who've now reached a certain wind-defying sentimental age, and he's the natural figure they latch onto. With doing him no good, writing books that John F. Kennedy himself right away would have been the first one to mock. But I wanted to show you a biography that is really good, and that is Michael O'Brien's biography. This is the trade paperback. The hardcover, rather disconcertingly, had a dust jacket over just a naked hardcover with a big close-up of Kennedy's face on it. But it came out as a trade paperback. I'm pretty sure that it's now out of print, hardcover and paperback, but it's well worth your time. It is, in my opinion, the first modern biography of John F. Kennedy. I'm not meaning to discount the so-called court histories. Sorensen's book is as accurate on Kennedy as anything you could ask for. It doesn't matter that they knew each other. But this book is Kennedy slowly emerging into the colder light of history. Also very big, but well worth your time. If you're looking for a Kennedy book to trust, well worth your time. And before we leave Jack Kennedy himself, I thought I would add an odd thing, something that I didn't expect to like as much as I did, a novel, a historical novel. This is Francine Matthews' book, Jack, 1939, about a young Jack Kennedy in Europe as part of his father's delegation as ambassador to the court of St. James. Getting involved in oddly James Bond Jr. type adventures. And when I read that description before I saw this book, I thought, well, that's going to be ridiculous. Most fiction about the Kennedys is ridiculous. But this is not. at all. I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. Really enjoy it. Of course, it points a finger at something that we don't have, which is a massive, brilliant historical novel about Kennedy's life in office. We don't have that. Don't know if we ever will. But this you'll enjoy it, I believe. And then the last figure that we want to deal with here is the third Kennedy brother, Edward Kennedy, who was not assassinated and who, thanks to an incident at Chappaquiddick, did not become president. He would have become president, except he was driving a campaign staffer of his along a road, Cape Cod, at night. They were alone. The car went off the road into the water, nose first. Kennedy escaped from the car and left the scene. He left Mary Jo Kopechne in the back seat. At one point, one account of his was that he tried to open the door and couldn't. At another time, another account of his is that he didn't try. He went to get help because he didn't think he could open the door, or that he wasn't thinking at all. And nobody knew about it until the next morning. The car went into the water. It's entirely possible that if he had acted right away, he would have saved Mary Jo Kopechne's life. It's entirely possible that if he had got help immediately, banged on doors until someone answered, he could have saved her life. There are conflicting accounts of whether or not he even tried to do that. It looks much more like he went back to his hotel in a panic and called his lawyers. Regardless, she died. And Edward Kennedy was never able to escape the shadow of Chappaquiddick. So he never became president. Instead, he stayed in the Senate for decades, which is a thing that, in its own way, his brothers did not get to do. And that has also been the subject of a great deal of writing, and I wanted to point you at these two books. Neil Gabler did a 2-volume, more or less political biography of Edward Kennedy. Volume 1 is Catching the Wind, takes you up to 1975, and then Volume 2 is Against the Wind, which takes you up to 2009. And these are really, really good. They are terrific books about Edward Kennedy, who really does deserve terrific books. I mean, he could be a foolish figure. For a large number of the years that he was in Congress, he was a falling down drunk. And there were a lot of scandals that were hushed up, a lot of them that will never come to the light of day. Because when the Kennedys hush up a scandal, they do it right. They'll a lot of the things that Ted Kennedy did in the Senate were well known to his colleagues. But nevertheless, this author also looks at his triumphs as well, his legitimate legislative triumphs, and the counterbalance that he did to the rise, this weird new kind of conservatism that was just starting to be born when he died. So there you go. There is a Kennedy starter kit. John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Edward Kennedy. There you go. I did not deal with the gigantic doorstop of the Fitzgeralds and the Kennedys. Doris Kearns Goodwin's great book on the origins of the whole families that takes you all the way to her present day. So it's not just the Fitzgeralds and the Kennedys. I didn't give you any books on Joe Kennedy. There have been a couple of really good ones. Didn't give you a collection of letters or anything like that. These are just the basics. A chunk of the basics of a starter kit for the Kennedys should be the men who knew them and who wrote wonderful books about them. So there you go. Now that deficiency has been corrected. I have now done a Kennedy starter kit on this channel. God help us. If I find out that I have not done a Roman starter kit, I don't know what I'm going to do. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, and I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.